Okay, peace. What do we have here? What do we have here today? Okay, let's get to business. Peace and greetings. Today we have the topic of discussion is the American descendants of slaves and the truth and the most accurate information and research pertaining to it. So, nothing more but the facts, nothing more but the truth, nothing biased. You know, I'm not leaning towards nobody's direction and nobody's opinion. I'm only leaning towards the truth with this video. So, we're going to start with the American descendants of slaves and the descendants of the American descendants of the Trail of Tears. So that's what this is about, the Trail of Tears. We don't get no American descendants of slaves without the Trail of Tears. So I'm going to shatter their paradigm. I'm going to shatter their dreams, just like I shattered the Hotep's dreams of building pyramids when I proved the Caliphate built the Grand Pyramids. I also proved the mighty Moorish Empire of the mound builders of the Whysupreemuhciss and the Mandate speakers up in Africa called the Dogon united to build the mounds and the cliff dwellings of the so-called New Mexico and Colorado region. So I have proved that. Now today I'm going to prove this new American descendants of slaves is nothing but mainstream attempts to capture our birthright and our inheritance. And your great brother from the Chicago People and Folks Nation Alliance of Moorish America is on top of all nonsense. So let's start with this photo and we'll get to other pictures and other information to prove that they are attempting to steal our salvation once again. Because the American descendants of slaves, I didn't come up with that. And the young people is the new leaders. The old people, the lawyers, the Masons, the sorority sisters, the AKA, the Eastern Stars, you know, the people with the state jobs, the federal jobs, the entertainers, those are not our people. Chicago peoples and folks is our people. You know it and I know it. You know you pertain to our culture, you accept our culture, our dance, our slang, whatever we brought to the table, and you already know about the freedom fighting and the fighting against white supremacy and illegal land settling. You know we've been at the forefront of fighting all that. So you're going to take our word over the people, the old media, and the old bootlicks and the old coons. So let's check this picture out. Let's look it up. Let's look at it and analyze it, because they'll talk about it, but what they don't do is analyze it to the point where we know every detail about it. Don't just tell me something about it. Break it down. So let's start with this dude to the left on this black horse. We have him with the turban and the feather on, and we already know what that means. And he also has the red, white, and blue on with the stripes. And he's marching some people. It looks like he's marching some people. And if you look at his face, he looks similar to the other people. And you see the children, you see the women, you see the mules, you see her wrapped up in the typical so-called Native American wear. But when you get up here to the right, the upper right, you see two dark-skinned people. You also see in the middle a so-called Asian Mongoloid type Indian with or Inuit with the cowboy hat on, with the white cowboy hat. Look to the right with the red on and you see the dark-skinned face, and the other one with the blue typical Native American garb on with the dark-skinned face. Now, according to mainstream history, that is a slave. That is a black African slave, and these people down here, the so-called Mongoloid Indian, is the so-called slave master. Now, we see the man with the turban on. You and I know that is a Muslim. We have already proved that the Cherokee and the so-called Seminole and the Yamasee is nothing but some Muslims. Now, if we zoom in to the left, right here, all the way to the left, we see the brother with the earrings in his ear on the horse is obviously a Moor with a turban on. And when you see his brother, it's nothing but an Arab or an Arab. But we falsely call them Cherokee. These is nothing but Muslim Moorish. And they are taking their people on the trail, protecting their people. And you see the European officer with his fez and feather on is escorting them on the trail. These are not the captors. The U.S. is forcing them off, so these is their people. You know, the Cherokee leader right here with the red, white, and blue on. These is our colors. I done proved that in other videos. And you have the Moor with him, and you have the Moor sisters up top, the so-called Negroes. So you saying they slaves, but who in their right mind is going to let their children and the mother walk, but let some slaves ride a wagon? Ask yourself that question. If this brother is a slave on this horse, who is letting this brother ride on this horse, but let the slave master walk with their children? And we also have in the back right here, zoom to the left, it's obviously some so-called Moor people or Negro people riding in a wagon. So we see the trail, it's his, and I already showed you the Smithsonian one, and we can pull up the other pic from the Smithsonian of the Negroes on the whole nother trail. So they marching all types of niggas up off their land, and we see the confederation of the Moorish. You know, this is why Drew Ali said Moorish, because he's not going to leave out these type of people. See, the black people is caught up with the black. They only want to be black. But when you in a nation, you know what I'm saying? You sharing with this particular nation. So this is their own nation, and they happen to be Moorish. So you might have another Moor kingdom who might be a little darker, but they Moors too. But this is their nationality, and they getting marched up out of here. Because we don't hate on, you know what I'm saying, the brown people. You know what I'm saying? So the African black, you know, they have discrimination policies, but you can only be black. You have to be totally black to be up in their situation, but not in America with the Cherokees, which was totally mixed up of Negro or some type of Inuit Eskimo looking people. And you can see him with the turban on, looking like a so-called Indian, you know, one of those people over there in the Sioux or the you know, the Iowa, the Minnesota, you know, those people up in that region looking like one of them. You know what I'm saying? These sisters walk around us every day as the Mayans, as the so-called Mexicans. You know, a lot of them got a lot of brown in them. You know, but they are classified as not your people. You know, you once lived together and thrived together, and they separated you. You know, just like any nation got a lot of different people. But y'all was living in harmony, and somebody said that it shouldn't be like that. Everybody should stay to themselves. So we see the so-called black up top, you know, the Negro in the wagon. We see the Inuit man, the Anu people, who is nothing but the Pacific Northwest peoples, you know, mixing in with the so-called Negro. And we see the turban on his head, and we see the turban on the brother right here in the back, the dark-skinned brother. So we don't know what type of status he has. We don't know what type of status these dark-skinned people have, because their origins can be from anywhere. All of these people could not be technically racially the same people, because we don't know what was going on in the ancient days. But culturally, ethnically, they can be the same people. Just like you can have Mexicans and so-called Negroes as Latin kings. You know, it's different colors in the Latin kings organizations. And other organizations got different people. And they accept each other. But only black Afro-African and pure white supremacists believe that they should stay pure to themselves. Everyone else don't believe that. So in the Moorish realm, we normally have something like the Polynesians would have. The Polynesians would have the Australoids, the Melanesians, and the Micronesians. So you have the Micronesians, who was the small and statured brown people. You have the Australoids, who have dominance in genetics. You know, and we have the Melanesian with the dominance with the brown. And they mix up to avoid Down syndrome and albinism. We have the same breeding programs and system in America with these brown people and our dark skin dominance in genetics. So we had our own civilization, and it is getting broken up. And as you can see, the fez wearing brother with the red, white, and blue moon representing his old culture is being hidden. Just like the U.S. flag is ours, the Confederate flag is ours. You know what I'm saying? I've been broke down. The Confederacy was ours. You have slow-mo niggas just not teaching this, wanting to get credit. You know what I mean? But don't get credit where it's due. But it's okay, because I'm going to keep pushing. And I know for a fact my people from Utah, Alabama. You know, so more than likely, if you're not from Alabama or Mississippi, you know what I mean, more than likely, you know, you don't have the roots like that. And more than likely, a lot of these people don't even know. Some of these people living there, they just been so urbanized, they don't even, you know, pay attention to their heritage. You know, so as I'm breaking down this photo, we see all types of people in here. And we can go We can go find some more. Let's go find some more Trail of Tears photos. Take a good look at that. Okay, let's say Trail of Tears. Okay. Let's just say. Yeah, this video might take a minute because it is very important that I bring this topic up for discussion, because it's nothing. We don't need to be talking about nothing else, because this is the big argument with the Moors and the Aborigines, but it's not mainstream yet. Our argument is, was the Moors here in the Spanish Empire here thousands of years, or did they just come up? And the Moors have proof of their civilization, and they want to know who the Aborigines is. We don't know who the Choctaw is and who the Aborigines is. You know, all of these people cut deals with the U.S. government, and now that those deals mean nothing, you know, they want to, claim past glory, after they have sold out. So we have Fort Negro era and, Maroon and the descendants of the Trail of Tears. And we know the Seminoles, how they rocking. We already know how they rocking. We already got videos with other peoples, on the East Coast. We already know how they rocking. They not hiding from what Drew Ali brought to the door. So we know they misnamed us Negro. And we know they misnamed us Spanish, because Andalusia was taken over with the Spanish, and before then it was Andalusia. So that means the Spanish Empire would be the Andalusian Empire, and we know Fort Negro would be Fort Moore. So Fort Negro on the Apalachicola River in Spanish territory was destroyed by the United States Army, Navy, and Marine Corps on July 27, 1816. So we have these facts. We have the truth that Fort Negro was destroyed. So the American descendants of slaves gotta tell us who they are. They cannot just come up with an organization acting like they speaking for some people for some reparations when they can be blocked. Because I guarantee you, the lawyers, the people who want to block it, they know the truth. They already know the truth of who's owed what and who got dismantled and disbursed. The American descendants of slaves is just reaching. They have not done the research on who is who and who is what, because the people of the descendants of the Trail of Tears is still living in Alabama. They still living in Muscogee, Georgia. They still living in North Florida. Even the Seminoles got their own bank right now. These people got their own civilization down here in Creek territory, in the Chattahoochee River civilization, all the way to the Mobile people. They got their own civilization separated from you, and you think you're going to invade it with your nonsense and your mainstream ideals. It's not going to happen, and it's protected, and the people that is owed is going to be paid fully. They getting paid and getting taken care of in their infancy right now, But the only thing we can do is progress them to a mature level to fend for themselves nationalistically. So, but the A.D.O.S is not going to outshine the A.D.O.T, the American descendants of Trail of Tears. The A.D.O.T versus the A.D.O.S is not going to happen. Not on my watch, because I know you don't want to claim the Islamic aspect. You don't want to claim the Moorish aspect and what Drew Ali brought, and you cannot get around it. You cannot get around the topic and discussion of what Drew Ali brought before any form of reparations is going to be talked about, because reparations means everyone. Everyone included with the so-called slave trade and bondage era. So we know Fort Negro was destroyed. So that's reparations. Right around with Black Wall Street. Let's look that up. So-called Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street. I bring the truth. I bring the facts. Okay. So they want to claim Black Wall Street, Greenwood, Tulsa, devastation. But I'm not going to let them claim it. So I'm going to put Indian all on this, and Moorish. I'm definitely going to put that. These are not black American descendants of slaves from Africa and has nothing to do with Africa. I can prove that in this video. So many of the black Americans who traveled to Oklahoma had ancestors who could be traced back to Oklahoma. Many of the settlers were relatives of Native Americans. I really don't have to really go past reading this. So I'll just read a couple of the names of the so-called people who had ties to the Native Americans. I mean, what their origins was. It was the Creeks, the Seminoles, and the Yuchi, and the Muscogee speaking people. So we have the 5 civilized tribes, but I'm not going to mention their names because it is controversy on how to pronounce their names and if these tribes did not come about pre or post U.S. government. So we have to find out the true origin of the names of these people. You know, we have the Cherokee, Choctaw, Muscogee, Creek. You know, all of these names is subject to discussion. We're not really going to, talk about them, and accept them because we know the so-called Negro is central when it comes to these so-called tribes, and they were kicked out. So, many of the black Americans who traveled to Oklahoma had ancestors who could be traced back to Oklahoma. So the ones who traveled to Oklahoma already had ancestors who can be traced back there. Do you understand what I'm saying? They didn't have no ancestors they can trace back to Africa. So many of the settlers were relatives of Native Americans who had traveled on foot with the 5 civilized tribes along the Trail of Tears. Others were descendants of people who had fled to Native American territory. So it don't get no better than this type of information that I'm relaying in this video. And this is the most important information. This is the pride that I use to energize and motivate myself, to liberate and free myself and my people from the iron hand oppression of the mental depression of the Roman suppression. So desegregation encouraged blacks to live and shop elsewhere in the city, causing Greenwood to lose much of its original vitality. Since then, city leaders have attempted to encourage the other economic development activity nearby. So they realized they've been duped through desegregation even in Greenwood after their town got bombed up. So they got bombed by the U.S. government with proof, and we have someone calling it Little Africa. But what I want to say is these is people from a distance who didn't really know what was going on. They just heard about it on the news, and they realized it was dark-skinned people. So Little Africa is a myth. It was never Little Africa. This is how the African American shit started. These is Native Americans who can trace their roots back to Oklahoma before there was even a Trail of Tears. Here it is. Can you read where it says roots? Now go to the second paragraph. Many of the black Americans who traveled to Oklahoma had ancestors who could be traced back to Oklahoma. So now guess what? Since I got family from Mississippi and Alabama and Chicago, that means I am an indigenous American. And what can you tell me if you claim to be a African? You cannot tell me nothing. And what I'm telling you is about the Trail of Tears is you have nothing to do with it. And here's the proof. Nova. Let me prove to you that the American descendants of slaves has nothing to do with the descendants of Trail of Tears. Nova Scotia settlers. Let me prove it to you. So, okay. Let's get to the bottom of this. It's definitely going to have to be a part 2, 3, and 4 to this because I see the American descendants of slaves is trying to run in on ours because we not claiming it. So since the A.D.O.S is claiming it, it's time for us to claim it. We need to claim it. We need to push on this because I see how they, they operate now. They are vultures. Even Negroes who look like you are vultures. We have the Nova Scotia settlers or Sierra Leone settlers, also known as the Nova Scotians or more commonly as the settlers. They were African Americans who founded the settlement of Freetown, Sierra Leone on March 11, 1792. Now, in 1792, they was already in Africa. They had already settled in Sierra Leone. And these is the people who couldn't, fight here. If they settled in Sierra Leone before 1812, before the 1812 burning of Washington, D.C., they was already in Africa, so they didn't even put in the work over here. You know what I'm saying? They wasn't over here suffering. They was gone. So we have the black so-called African people who fled, and they are known as the black loyalists. I already didn't touch down on this in all of my recent videos, and it's led up to this so I can expose the A.D.O.S. You know, I knew it was coming. You know, I knew the infiltration was coming on my movements because a lot of those accounts of popularity was my accounts back in the day, putting in work, you know, brewing up the necessary conversation leading to this day to expose the final chess move of the so-called high IQs. The so-called high IQs thought they was going to hijack the Descendants of Trail of Tears movement, which is the Chicago folks and people culture that I'm a descendant of. And as you can see, the game is over with. You can't get past me on nothing. It is no way you can trick me. You know, with your black tactics, with your black masonry and black magic, and your African hotep pan-African fuckery. Now check this out. We have Sierra Leone Creole people in a Creole language. And we have the people on the west coast of Africa, you know, claiming to be African Americans. And they've been there since 1792, right? So now we have the people saying that, you know, these are where your ancestors are from. And as you can see, the so-called African Americans colonized this same region in 1792, right? So we on top of the game, right? So that's 200 years ago. That's approximately 220 years ago. These people came from America and went over there. Now when you do the DNA sampling over there, it comes back to the same as yours. So of course these are the sellouts. These are the people who went over there who already put this program in motion to control a whole continent of so-called savages. And these are your Masons. These are your Masons who put this program in motion years ago. They knew that they can dupe you and steal from you. And we have the African so-called slaves. And we have the African Americans who want reparations. But they cannot get reparations. They already went to Africa. They already went to Liberia. Let me show you. Liberia. Liberia is a country in West Africa which was founded, established, colonized, and controlled by citizens of the United States and ex-Caribbean slaves as a colony for former African American slaves. So all the African Americans and the Caribbean Africans had a choice to go back to Africa. So at this point, there's no complaining for the African American because he was given jobs and opportunities to fit in white society at this point. He made a choice to stay here. You know, Thomas Peters, black pioneer and one of the founding fathers of the Nova Scotia settlers and colony of West Africa. So these are the people in Africa that's causing confusion in Africa, trying to confuse them, trying to confuse us over here. And we have to put two and two together who was fighting these people, who was fighting these Nova Scotians and these British allies called the Black Loyalists. They are British allies, and we know what it is with the British. As we break down who the Trail of Tears was, we know the Trail of Tears. So as you can see, the Black Loyalist is loyal to Great Britain. So, you know, Great Britain was over here tricking a lot of the so-called Native Americans, the so-called indigenous. We know what they did to the indigenous. We know what they did to the indigenous worldwide. So, we have the Black Loyalist who is loyal to Great Britain, but I don't know if people are ready to forgive them. I don't know if you are ready to forgive the Black Loyalists for being loyal to Great Britain. Now let's look them up. Let's look it up. Let's prove my whole case right here in this video against the A.D.O.S and the black loyalist and Pan-Africanist. A lot of people got to get arrested in Great Britain. British war crimes. They even have a long list of war crimes against Great Britain. You know. So we have the Hague Conventions of 1899 and 07, where they had to have conventions, Geneva conventions, 1, 2, 3, 4th Geneva conventions, accusing the Great Britain, European albinos, of straight up slaughtering people all over the world. They even had trials for the Boers in South Africa, for the Queen kidnapping Mohawk children. Let me prove to you. Queen guilty of killing Mohawk children. Let's go here. Oh no, I wish I would have went to that. Humans are free. Okay. So they have the Aboriginal grave sites of the Mohawk Institute. And 10 Aboriginal children were kidnapped by the Queen, and she was found guilty by the common courts for child genocide. And this is getting talked about because mainstream media in America has you bamboozled. You don't even know the Queen of England was found guilty of war crimes and genocide right here in America. The Anglican Church of England in 1832 was set up to imprison and destroy generations of Mohawk children and whiten them up and lighten up their skin and make them pray to Jesus. They just poured the matter of fact, let's read this. This is very important. And this is testimony. Fortunately, Mr. Coombs' testimony was videotaped before his death and is available for the tribunal. Reverend Kevin Annett states that instruments of torture such as a rack for torturing the Mohawk children and ritual torture had been found at the now closed Mohawk Institute. Eyewitnesses from the Mohawk community have stated they witnessed priests in red robes torturing children in ritual torture. Reverend Annett made these revelations in an exclusive October 7, 2011 interview with Alfred Lambermont Webre. So, in the interview, Reverend Annett acknowledges the close parallels between the October 1964 personal child genocide and the possible ritual killings of 10 Aboriginal children by Elizabeth Windsor, heads of state of Canada and head of Church of England, and the child genocides occurring during the same period at the Mohawk Institute. So they are taking out the dark-skinned Mohawk children to make sure they don't claim their Aboriginal estate. They are taking them out, and she has been found guilty, but only peasants and Goyim and weaklings celebrate this maniac and are afraid to call him out. All the mainstream cretins and the GMO, genetically engineered maniac Autobots, they the ones who support the Queen and the Prince, and the rest of the European demonic regimes that wishes to destroy Aboriginal lives. I'm not supporting them. It's nothing they can do for me. Look at them. So, we have the Queen that is guilty. It ain't no doubt in my mind that she guilty. Guilty of mass genocide, stealing from the Moors, stealing from the Muslim, stealing from the little children, probably eating their blood. Because they were ritualistically killing them, according to the eyewitness account. So when we get back to the business of incriminating our own people, which we have the right to, We have the British war crimes, which is one thing. That means the world has to bring them to justice. But when it comes to us, we have to bring ourselves to justice. And we have every right to do exactly that. And we have the black loyalists sitting there being loyal to Great Britain out of all people. Now let's see where the Freemason capital is. Freemason headquarters. Okay. Putting two and two together. Okay, and it is in Washington, D.C., the House of the Temple of Masonic Temple in Washington, D.C. That serves as the headquarters of the Scottish Rite. And that is in Washington, D.C. And we have the Freemasons Hall of London, the headquarters of the United Grand Lodge of England. So we know what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a bunch of thieves. History revisionists want to hide the Aborigines because we never hear nothing about the Aborigine legends. Why we never hear about the Aborigine legends, and then when they do tell us something about the Aborigines and the Moors, they always looking, whited out and pale. So the conspiracy is obvious and it is exposed. We have the Nova Scotia Africans who got up out of here. The Nova Scotia settlers got up out of here in 1792, along with the Creole people and the Jamaican Maroons. So we have the British Jamaicans who run hip-hop now. They are agents with DJ Kool Herc and African Bambaataa, KRS-One. These are all slave masters with a tradition of tricking the masses. And the veil has been lifted. It is over with. These are not your people. These are people who went to Africa. And we have the descendants of the Trelatiers who went to Oklahoma, where they already had relatives at. So do you see how we are on top of the game? And they bombed this town. And after they bombed it, I guess they got mad they didn't want to be Africans. So I guess the Africans okayed it and the blacks okayed the bombing because we didn't want to be Africans. We wanted to go back to our Oklahoma ancestral homelands. And it says it right here. During the oil boom of the 1910s, the area of northeast Oklahoma around Tulsa flourished, including the Greenwood neighborhood, which came to be known as the Negro Wall Street, now commonly referred to as the Black Wall Street. The area was home to dozens of prominent black businessmen. And you see how they call you black now. The Native Americans is calling themselves Native Americans, but now they blacking you out because of the oil. So we have our people technically the first people to be attacked for our oil because we have the BP oil. Let's look it up. Gulf of Mexico BP oil. Let's look it up. This is real information. And we have the Gulf spill in the BP. So that means in Alabama, Mobile, Alabama, we have those Indians getting slaughtered. The Mobilians, let's look it up, for their oil. The Mobile Indians. So we have the Mobila, who is nothing but some Moors because they come from Tuscaloosa. And they were a Muscogee tribe of Alabama, relatives of the so-called Choctaw. And the language was never well recorded, but it's either a Choctaw or closely related. So we have the Mobiles akin to Tuscaloosa and them, and Alabama getting bombed up first. Now the BP, British, is in Birmingham, Alabama, and the oil was gone. And we have the Greenwood massacre of Oklahoma. So we have them getting their. So do you see how you are playing rich? You are playing rich like the prophet told you. And we have the distractoids, the diffusionists on the internet talking about the American descendants of slaves because that Pan-African shit ain't working no more. You feel me? The going back to Africa shit, ain't working no more. The delusions is over with. And, guess what? It's nothing they can tell us. They are straight idiots. And they are only looking for whom they may devour. They're only looking for the weak who they can fool. The people they can trick. The majority of the retards they are trying to gain support from. Because the rest of the people is not going. Because I know you are a claimed idiot. If you are connected to the old media and the old ways, and you believe anything that they say, you are an idiot to me at this point. It is nothing to discuss. So, we have the Tulsa Race Massacre, which was about stealing the oil, as we can see. And we have the eyewitness accounts in the root section that Many of the black Americans traveled to Oklahoma already had ancestors. So during the trail that I showed you, let's look up the Smithsonian trail. Let me show you the Negroes. Let me show you Trail of Tears. I know it's going to pop up. I'm going to find what I'm looking for to prove to my people. You know. Let's see what we looking for. Where is the Smithsonian at? I want to see what they say. Britannica. U.S. history. Okay, here go the Smithsonian. Because I'm on top of the game, and this is the video you need to see. You know, the other videos I'm sure you enjoy, but this is where I put all of my effort in and all my passion in the DOT movement that's trying to get hijacked by the A.D.O.S. They can't touch me. I'm down here in the South, protected, you heard me? So the information is going to get out. I can't be bought and paid for because we are the living descendants of the fighters. They don't teach you about the fighters. They suppress the fighters and push them to the curb and tell you about the slaves. We not going for the slaves. We are definitely prisoners of war, and our story need to get told, and it is not getting told by no goddamn slaves. So, as you can see, according to the Smithsonian Institute, you see our people marching in unison with the same type of clothes on, proving that they are a distinct culture, dressed alike. Unlike the Cherokee Trail of Tears, you seen the Cherokees had different colors, different types of people. They had the turbans on. These are more like a farm class type people, a family of clans, but they are getting marched up out of there. But they are still our type of people, the so-called Negro type. But they are the Native American, the indigenous American, and they are going on the Trail of Tears, according to the Smithsonian. And let's go ahead and read from the story of the people. Okay. Oh, get off my land. Okay. Now let's get an eyewitness account. Let's get an eyewitness account of what happened to the Trail of Tears victims. So let me read this. Miss Dolores McQuinn was saying when she was growing up, her father told her a story, you know, searching for the family roots. And her grandfather went to the folks who had owned our family and asked, do you have any documentation about our history during the slave days? We would like to see it if possible. The man at the door, who I have to assume was from the slaveholding side, said, sure, we'll give it to you. The man went into the house and came back with some papers in his hands. Now, whether papers were trivial or actual plantation record, who knows? But he stood in the door in front of my grandfather and lit a match to the papers. You want your history? He said, here it is, watching the things burn. Take the ashes and get off my land. The intent was to keep that history buried, McQuinn says today, and I think something like that has happened over and over again, symbolically. So they was raised in Richmond, Virginia, and this what happened to them. So we had the Union side. So we have, after the Union War and the 1812 War. See, I'm exposing the agent, and I'm informing you of our real history and heritage simultaneously, and this is very valuable information. So during the so-called Civil War and this dispute, these people was living well. So as we can see, they were not in slavery during the Confederacy. That is a lie. So because according to this, their house, their records is being burned, proving that they were a free people. What would they be doing with any records or any holdings if they were slaves from the get-go? They were not slaves. They were a free people, and they're getting marched up out of here, and you're falling for the African chicanery. Now, let's get to the information. Okay, let's get a good look at her, because you can see the look in her eyes. She got tricked up out of her land. I feel sorry for her. And this is back to the 1600s. They can trail. Okay. So, I need to read her story. I wish I really read that story. You know, a lot of people got duped up out their land. Forced up out their land. Just walked up out of here. They just probably rolled down on a community of people like, come on, let's take a long trip. Dropped their ass off anywhere. And slowly but surely killed their ass too. And that probably was part of the British plan of genocide any goddamn way against so-called Negroes. All of this shit go hand in hand, and nothing else needs to be talking about. We have clowns on here talking about spaceships. You know what I'm saying? We have clowns out here steady talking about pyramids and shit. We have, goofballs talking about what's symbolic, the symbolism for esotericism. And we talking about getting our goddamn land back and getting all these goofies up out of our business, as you can see. So I prove to you that the A.D.O.S. Let's look that up. A.D.O.S. movement. The A.D.O.S. movement, we already can tell it is being endorsed by like Don Lemon, CNN, Tariq Nasheed, these mainstream, the Yvette Carnell, straight black, but don't want to claim the more of the Muslim part of our culture. These type of Negroes, these fraternity, college, HBCU Negroes, these Negroes has no say. And that is the reason why they come up with the African American and A.D.O.S. to overshadow the Muslim, Islam, the Latin, and the Indian, the people who don't want to be African. So they come up with their own culture because they want to be separate to themselves. So since the A.D.O.S. and the African Americans want to be to themselves, they cannot speak for us because we embrace Islam. I don't support Louis Farrakhan. Don't really give a damn about him, but I'm not finna, you know what I'm saying? I'm not finna disrespect him, for the mainstream. I'm not finna outcast him for them. I'm not finna speak against him for them. But me personally, the African A.D.O.S. black are really just lower level Masons already put in place as emergency protocols just in case we breach any form of the matrix barricades and blocks that they put up on any movement. So the A.D.O.S. movement has nothing to do with the American Descendants of Trail of Tears. I'm letting you know that now. It is no mix because you have to talk to the actual descendants and the older people and the people who've been putting in work already. You cannot come overshadow them. We hollering at the people who already laid the groundwork down. 100 years ago. People who laid the groundwork down, we hollering at them. We building off that in the ADOT movement. The A.D.O.S. is about Africans. They put in the American on there. But when you put the American on there, you got to put Islam on there. You got to put Israel on there. You got to put the Native American cultures on there. You got to put some of the Latin, Spanish on there. And that's the African black is not willing to do that. They're not willing to accept. They're not willing to accept the fact that, we was a confederation of people that you know nothing about. And roots is a lie. It's already been a lawsuit against them, for the slander against our people, making us look like some African buffoons, and some Negro servants. And we know we the fighters. We know who was the fighters. We know who the African slaves was. We know the African Nova Scotia, Sierra Leone, Ghana people went back to Africa in 1792. We know Liberia formed its colony to get up out of here. You understand what I'm saying? We know they got up out of here. And as I read to you, you can see that the so-called black Americans already had homeland in Oklahoma. And it was taken during the oil boom. The Queen is guilty of killing children, and black loyalists support her. You support black loyalists. You support African Americans. You support the True Whig Party. You support African Freemasons and London Freemasons. We know who you are. So you can't trick us no more. You can keep trying. You can keep trying. But you know what? I'm gonna keep denying. I'm on top of the game. You know, I'm too futuristic with the information, man. You know, I got a culture to defend. You know, much love to the Africans. I'm not hating on no African, no Australian, no Asian. You know, because I already know about the Tree of Life in Asia. I know about the 50 Towers, 50 Tower Cities of Revelations. I know about the true Israelites. I know about the true Moors. I got the real manuscripts. I got the real information. I got the real information to really set everything straight historically. You know, I got the real info. So, but we got to get past the barricades in your mind, you know, and the trap set up for you. And we, as we can see, the A.D.O.S is a trap. We already know it's the trap. We know Pan-Africanism has been put deep into the abyss by me, because as you can see, the feds on the Canaanite, we know who built the giant structures over there. Do you see how I destroy Pan-Africans? The reason why I say I destroy Pan-Africans is because Pan-Africans don't claim Islam. They claim Islam enslaved them. They claim Moors sold them out. So I took that civilization from them. And that is Sumeria as well. I took that civilization from them because they don't want to be Islamic. So you cannot have Egypt anymore. You cannot have the Pacific Islands because they are Moors and Moorish. We cannot have the Southeast. You cannot have the Southeast of America, Georgia and Alabama, because I have already proved that is Moorish. The Spanish Empire is Moorish. I have proved Mizraim is actually Egypt. Egypt is actually Mizraim. Hatti is an old Latin, and Averis is supposed to be Greece. I'm proving too much. I'm proving too much. So, we got the Trail of Tears, and we have the A.D.O.S. We have the Native Americans embracing Islam. We have the A.D.O.S. embracing Christianity and Greek fraternity. Right? Is that what this is not about? You have us Chicago people who not going for white supremacy and mulattoes. And you have you people who love to be duped by them. We not going. We never was going. And now you have to holler at us. You got to come holler at us. So let me show you in the Bible before I end this. Let me show you why you are not descendants of the Trail of Tears, my A.D.O.S's, adios. Even in the Bible, they tell you about the sons of Ham were Cush and Mizraim and Put and Canaan. You have to fall in one of these categories, my Negroes, or the Bible is not for you. You have to go somewhere else. Your beginnings is somewhere else for civilization. And we know Canaan is the so-called Mesopotamia and Asiatics with the Fez on I just showed you. We know Put is the east coast of Arabia and Somalia. We know Mizraim is Missouri, America. And we know Kush is equatorial regions, all the equator, east to west. And we know Ham is both continents of America. That's right. So, Egypt don't exist, but Missouri do. And let me show you why the A.D.O.S is not descendants of Trail of Tears, because descendants of Trail of Tears is Missourians. Okay. Let me show you with proof. Historical proof. Okay. Let me show you with proof that America is Mizraim, and they're hiding you biblically, and they're robbing you for your oil. And as you can see, 30% of land to the east of the river and 70% is west. And this similar usage of landscape and canals is right here in America. On the Mississippi. the same as the now. And this is Mizraim, a colonial empire built by our ancient Moorish ancestors. And on the Mississippi, we have 70% of the land to the west, 30% to the east. And we also have Memphis. And we also have Memphis in Egypt, proving the same designers built both lands. And we also have pyramids and mounds similar to the ones in Egypt. Right? So, what does that have to do with you? The so-called Hebrews, also known as the children of Israel, sojourned in Egypt for 430 years and were enslaved there for 400 years. So what they did to them in Egypt, they are replicating over here. Right? And the reason why that's important is because they are enslaving the Egyptians over there. They are enslaving the Egyptians over here. And as you can see, all of these Islamic Moorish names, they are trying to hide and replace it with Israel at this time, so you can forget. They are invading fast. As you can see, Cairo, you have Cairo, Illinois. Right? You have Memphis. So they are destroying Egypt of the West right before your eyes. They are destroying Egypt of the West right before your eyes, like they did and replaced that country with the mulatto mestizo. And we have the mestizo invasion occurring right now, destroying Egypt of the West. Now, if you were A.D.O.S or an African slave, right, they wouldn't be destroying you over here. You was already a slave. And we know what they are doing. They're making you walk the Trail of Tears, stealing your oil, making you look stupid every day, hiring these goofballs in the mainstream, so they can pimp and post up and make them look like it's you when it is not. Why they do with you whatever they want to. So I prove America is literally Mizraim because we have Missouri Compromise. Okay. We have the Missouri Compromise was an effort by Congress to diffuse the sectional and political rivalries triggered by the request of Missouri late in 1819 for admission as a state in which slavery would be permitted. See, Missouri was our homeland, right? And Noble Drew Ali came and got it back. And slavery was abolished, but they wanted to bring it back because our people were doing big things out there. In Kansas and Nebraska and New Mexico and Colorado, we built all of those civilizations and those cliff dwellings. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the Missouri Compromise was to make it a slave state. It was not a slave state. We was already living there. And I have proof. So I can go through all that in my video and destroy them. I can destroy their dreams. To prove that the A.D.O.S has nothing to do with us. I know you want to know why did he show the proof of Egypt? Why did he show the Egyptian? Why did he show the Canaanite? Why is that important? You want to know why that's important, brothers and sisters? You want to know why that's important? Because the mainstream boot-licking Negro is paid to hide Islam and Moorish America. And we have the adobe house or Pueblos culture, the stone Pueblos, and the cliff dwellings. And you see our people was with these people getting marched on the Trail of Tears. And they built these ancient apartments that you see right here, which is the same as the ones in Morocco. So we have Egypt getting destroyed in Africa, Eastern Moroccan building, and we have Eastern adobe in Acoma Pueblo. So we have Egypt getting destroyed in Africa. We have Egypt getting destroyed in America. We have caught them red-handed. So, I prove my point. So, the American descendants of slaves are not a part of the Anasazi and the Teos Pueblos and the Cherokee and the Seminole. The American descendants of slaves are a part of the Africans. And if they are African agents, they should be in Sierra Leone because they already struck a deal. The Native American so-called Negroes didn't strike a deal. That's why they call us those names to denationalize us. Because we don't have a name. They call us Negro and Black. The African have a name. He's an African. He has nothing to do with this. And if you mix with African, that's on you. But I am all American, and I am all for what the Moors brought and the information they brought to attach us globally. But my birthright in America don't have nothing to do with nowhere else. If I got a birthright somewhere else, so be it. But I definitely have a birthright here in America, with plenty of architecture that is getting blown to smithereens and hidden under mounds right now today, that is getting hidden. You know, as we can see, the Battle of Mora was in 1847, and even in this picture, we can see the buildings in the back, but their cannons face to it. You see the cannon is faced towards the town of the U.S., of the so-called U.S. You see the U.S. flag with the bullets flaming toward the city. You see the buildings. So that means they is blowing up mega buildings, all in America, hiding who was here. So we have the A.D.O.S, who is never going to touch down on the Battle of Mora, you know, and the Muscogeans, who is not going for that African stuff. We know what it is. So we have the Mohawk chiefs, you know. We have the Algonquian and Arabic connection. Okay, you see the little brother with the blue on. As you can see the little brother, you know, in London with the Mohawks. And they doing business in London. I guess they trying to avoid their extermination. So we have the Shak Mason, Shak Amaxam. It's called Shak Amaxam, and that's why the Moors say that this place is called Amexam. Sashem Aksam. The original name of the Mohawks is Kananianka, which resembles Canaan, Israel, Phoenicians, and that's why they had the same language in the Algonquin and Arabic similarities with the Cherokees as well. So the reason why this is crucial is because the A.D.O.S is in their mind with the black and the African. They cannot let it go. So they cannot speak for us because we are the intelligent class, and they believe they are the intelligent class, but they are sick maniacs. We cannot go forward with no people like that who exalted themselves on top of us for all of them years, disrespecting us, you know, calling us thugs and hoodlums, you know, disrespecting our culture for being rebellious towards white supremacy, but they kissed up to white supremacy. Now they want to jump on the bandwagon, but they cannot jump fully on the bandwagon because we know that they were sellouts. We would never allow them around us, so they have to come up with the A.D.O.S because they still want to get paid, even though they got paid going to Africa, they got paid going to Liberia, they got paid going to Ghana. Now they want to get paid this A.D.O.S and kick us to the curb again. And as you can see, I'm on top of it. I'm on top of the A.D.O.S, and I'm rejecting it. I want a full American descendant of Trail of Tears movement. You know, because the A.D.O.S will get paid to hide the Moors. You better know it. You better know it. They're going to hide the Islam. They're going to hide the so-called Phoenician Israel. Let's look it up. We see Hotel Moran on the Cherokee Strip in 1893. This is well before the oil boom. The oil boom was in the 1910s. So they own this land that they thought was deserted land, and our ancestors knew it was their homeland. They knew where to go. They probably negotiated it from day one because they was already industrial. Like, well, we'll just go to Oklahoma. Y'all can have this. So they thinking, because they by Florida, by the salt water, they thinking they balling by Florida, the European. But we went to the oil lands, and we got rich off that. So the U.S. government felt insulted, and they bombed us. So, as you can see, Oklahoma is owned by us, and there's a case where the brother is Patrick Murphy is supposed to be released because he was convicted of murder in the U.S. courts when he should have been tried in the Oklahoma indigenous muscogee courts. You know, so that's what this is all about. And the A.D.O.S is going to keep you a slave. A slave cannot have a court. You are descendants of a slave. See the language that they are using? You should be descendants of the Cherokees, the descendants of the Muscogee, descendants of the Choctaw, descendants of the Seminoles, descendants of the Moorish Empire. like you say, Hotel Moran, but you want to be descendants of the slaves. And we are not tolerating that language over here. We are not letting them write the narrative or lead nothing. They are followers. Everybody who learned the way Yvette Cornell and the rest of them learned is at the bottom of the totem pole now. Those are technically the retards because they are filled up to the brim with the nonsense of white supremacists. And they might have believed that they were black all those years, you know, and they was fighting for the black cause. But black supremacy is nothing but a white supremacist concept to keep you lost in the sauce about your nationality and your birthright. Because you need to know who you are. You need to know who your mothers and fathers are, not what a color is. So I'm on top of the game. I broke it all down in one video. And I definitely got to do a touch-up on this video. I know I do. I know I got to do a touch-up on this video. So, we have Oklahoma up for grabs. We about to go claim that, but the A.D.O.S is about to distract us. So this is our ancestral homelands, along with Georgia and Illinois, Missouri and Kansas. We got a lot of dead bodies in these grounds. So we got a lot of Africans and Jamaicans disrespecting us. We got a lot of mestizo culture vultures. And we have white supremacy once again trying to confuse you. You know, to take flight of the fight. The fight to protect our borders from all of these idiots. We have the right to protect our borders. We have a right to erect a wall because we are being invaded. You have to stand up and wake the hell up. Enough is enough. We are being invaded. We are being attacked, actually. They are going for the grand feast, the so-called purge. You didn't even know the purge was about you. They are going for the purge. They are going for the jugular to take you down. They want to take you all the way down because they are greedy. They are addicts. They are power addicts. They thrive off your fear. But, you know, I'm not going for it. You know I'm on top of the game, brothers and sisters. We have the Qualla tribe and the Yamasee tribe. We have Native American history we got to claim. We have the Mexican secession. When the Treaty of Guadalupe and Hidalgo in 1848. So that means in 1848 and 1847, in all of this area, our people was living here. Because if you think about it, the Missouri Compromise was in 1819. So this means that our people had all this access. They had access to all this without white supremacy, going to show you that they wasn't slaves. And if you think about the War of 1812 and the burning of Washington, D.C., if you think about the burning of Washington, D.C. in 1812, they was burning Washington, D.C., and they hadn't had the Indian Removal Act. This prompted the Indian Removal Act. That meant you had a lot of Negroes doing what they want to do, having railroad systems, boat systems, Moorish canals, you know, Moorish communities, well, river communities. But in 1812, after they burned down Washington, D.C., the so-called Nova Scotia settlers, they burned down Washington, D.C. for Great Britain, right? And that's what prompted the removal of everybody. They went on ahead and went nuts, and they just said everybody got to go. Everybody got to go. You know what I'm saying? So that means before 1812, nobody was in Georgia, nobody was in Alabama to be enslaved, nobody was in Florida to be enslaved, because we have the Yamasee all up in Carolina and Florida. Yamasee Revolt. So we have the Yamasee Revolt, the Yamasee War, going against, you know, the slave trade and enslaving Native Americans. And this was in 1715. So we know there was no Europeans in Georgia in the farmlands. They were trying to take over Spanish America, but they was just in Virginia at this time. So we have no slaves in this area yet, only in the colonies of New York. All of the devastation is going on in New York. They killing them people. They putting blood in the ground over there, doing them people wrong. So we have down here in the South, they hadn't got the land yet until the Louisiana Purchase and then the purchase of Creek territory. So we have no slavery going on down here. We just have a gang of Spanish and Latin Creole speaking people and Moorish people And in 1848, they finally pushed everybody to Mexico. So before 1848, there was no major slave trade of anybody. That is a goddamn lie. There is no American descendants of slaves. That is a goddamn lie. And if you is an American descendant of a slave, you was a volunteer and a goddamn goofball. There was bondage from 1719. From 1779 to 1865. 1779 to 1865. Let's see what pop up. Okay. Slavery. Okay. I can't wait to share this other information. I gotta end this video because I did my thing with the information today. So we have the North states where all of the slavery was really at. You know I do my thing. When did slavery really end in the North? 1790 is when they started penetrating. I say 1811 they got up in Missouri. So you can't even count Missouri. But in Illinois, I want to say they stole about 50,000 people out of Illinois. I got the book on it. But right here from 1790 we have 169,000. In 1800 we have 200,000. And it started to reduce after that. It gets up to about 355, 400. Oh no, it goes all the way up. We have 451,000 all the way up to 1860 in the North states. So that's not a million. But the names are Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware. Okay, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, Wisconsin, Missouri definitely was. Okay, it was not on there from 1790 to 1800. Like I say, they was not in Missouri until 1811. And as you can see in 1810, they have immediately enslaved 3,000 people in Missouri. In Iowa, they had not been to Iowa until 1830. They go to show you the Indians had been fighting, the indigenous. And in Utah, they didn't get in there to 1840 because of the Mormons' genocide. Nebraska, Kansas, they didn't get into Kansas until 1850. And these are the areas where our people was living. And as you can see, Georgia, Alabama, or Mississippi is not on here for a reason. Even though they are only showing you the North, you know. But if you get down to the South, they cannot show you no numbers. Now look at these numbers down here, number of slaves by year. And they showing you something different up here. Now, if you think about the South, they cannot show you no slaves in the South because the land purchase, the illegal land purchase of the Creek territories didn't happen until 1832. And the Trail of Tears, it happened around that time. In the 1830s, 1840s, before then, there was no information on slaves because slavery didn't happen. It was not happening in that territory. It's a lie. The Spanish didn't have no slaves in the South. And the Louisiana territory was ruled by Alabama Tuscaloosa people. They had no slaves unless they had prisoners. So I broke this down. And as you can see where the North was enslaving people at, where they was land encroaching. Wherever they encroached land, they enslaved the native population. You know what I mean? Until they got up to the millions. And now they got you, they taxing you out your mind, and enslaving you, putting you in prison, charging you to travel, charging you for everything, slaving you like that. You know, they're slaving you like that. And I'm sure a lot of Europeans was enslaved. But this happened from 1779 to 1865. And it technically didn't stop. That's like 90 years, right, of legal slavery. And legal slavery, we don't know how long that lasted, or bondage. And we have the fact of the matter that in the South, there was no American descendants of slaves. So we have these northern people who would have to be some northern niggas who was enslaved, and they would have to explain that because they don't speak for the Trail of Tears. So the A.D.O.S has to explain exactly who the fuck they are. And if any of them is linked to the South, they got to answer to us. And guess what? We are not Africans and we are not black. We are Americans, the indigenous Americans, and we are the American descendants of the Trail of Tears. And we are not black, we are not Negro, we are not Afro, we are not African. And we are exactly what our ancestors was. And the A.D.O.S do not speak for us. Pan-Africanism does not speak for us. We are not hating on Pan-African. We do not hate for them. They just do not speak for us. Just like we don't speak for the African Union. Just like we don't speak for any country in Africa. We don't speak for the Pan-Africans, period. So, we have my next video coming out exposing the mestizos and exposing the true origins of the niggas, of the so-called Negro Americans, and that is going to be the icing on the cake of why they are all are hiding your legacy. But this video should have been very informative. It really should have given you a lot of insight on why you being attacked, because they want your fresh water, they want your copper, they want your steel. You have the most in the world, you have the most trees, you have the most beautiful women, the best culture. The culture vultures are swarming down on you, boy, and I'm on top of the game. I'm on top of it. You know, I'm on top of it because they can't fool me. So I'm not going to let them fool you, because you would be out there trying to trick me and my children. You would be out there trying to teach my child a goddamn lie. And I ain't going. I refuse. So let's do a quick rundown, and this video is over. This video is over with, because I can't talk you to death. I can always do another one on the Descendants of Trail of Tears. So we have the Islam getting hid. We have West Cairo, Illinois.
If you're someone who cares about Illinois' history, about Illinois' culture, and about Illinois' ecology, then you owe it to yourself to visit Cairo. But that's not an easy thing to do. If you're planning on staying overnight, unless you know somebody, you're going to have to stay outside of town because the hotels and the motels closed years ago. And if you're planning on picnicking in Defiant State Park, which is a beautiful park right at the confluence of the Ohio and the Mississippi rivers, you're going to need to buy your food on the road because Cairo's last grocery store closed in 2015, and since then, it's been a food desert. It's easy to understand why people here are frustrated by the decline and by the lack of interest that the rest of the state has shown towards Cairo's plight. I can't think of another place in Illinois that was written about by Charles Dickens, Mark Twain, Barack Obama, and Neil Gaiman. Cairo was a stop on the Chitlin Circuit, meaning it had an incredible influence on the development of blues music and everything that came after it. Like Galena, Cairo has history with Ulysses S. Grant, who used Cairo as a base of operations to launch his offensive into the South. And Cairo was also the home of the ironclad ships, who would port back here to repair and then set out again. Cairo is also immensely significant in Illinois' struggle for civil rights. We often think of Jim Crow laws as something that happened just in the South, but segregation was a part of daily life here in Cairo through the 1960s as well. Thanks to coordinated efforts between activists and lawyers in Chicago and in Cairo, Cairo held massive protests that resonated both through the state of Illinois and the entire South.
Shots have been fired into a town.
So we have Cairo, Illinois, that actually was the focal point of attack on Mizraim, or Egypt in the West. Do you understand what I'm saying? How significant you are? That is why the prophet said you are playing rich. So we have Cairo, Illinois, that has been attacked over there in the Nile. And the Nile in the West is under attack over here in Illinois. The family is over here. See, the A.D.O.S is not going to teach you that. They're going to teach you that you were African that came off a ship. And we're going to teach you that you are a mighty people who got invaded by a mixture of a gang of people who has nothing but some haters. Some culture vulture haters. You feel me? They said we were savage. Now they over here killing us. You feel me? They said we were savages. You know what I'm saying? Now you see these people who was marched on the Trail of Tears and the Mohawks getting killed. And you have the Anu man. Remember early in the video when I showed you the Anu man with the turban on? And we have the so-called brown people. So-called getting called black now. And you know a lot of y'all looking like, you know what I'm saying, Nia Long, Halle Berry's. You know, you got the different looks. A lot of y'all ain't really black. Like this nigga look like an Asian. So, we do the quick rundown. We in this video. You know, I might see something I wanted to talk about. Okay. The Inca Wall. Okay, this is pretty much over with. The Descendants of the Trail of Tears is a unique people, and it's my people, Chicago folk, you know, folk and people. And we have a distinct blood group. We have a distinct culture. We know exactly who we is. We know who to thank. We don't need nobody to walk us around. You know, we don't need nobody to tell us nothing. You know, we got this. If you want to help, just leave your donation by the door. Leave your donation by the door. And I got to do a video on this too, because that is not corn. I was told that is not corn in India. That is actually a drill. That was drilling technology for the Indians over here helping us build our pyramids. And that's going to be a whole nother story. You see the corn in the Indians' hand? That is actually a drill bit for a powerful drill device. And the scientist has revealed it, but that's another video. So the Descendants of the Trail of Tears and the children all over the world looking like us is struggling. The little Moorish children and the Israel children is under attack by the A.D.O.S. Because as you can see, the free blacks of Israel, the Israelites, you know, was free people. And we was with the indigenous people. You know, over here in America, along with the Moors, was a civilization of people who loved each other. And now we have people who want to just be black and African and Afro. And those are government agents. They don't have a real nationality, and they're not claiming their ancestors' name, who their original ancestors was. They are only claiming what the Europeans is telling them to claim. So those are not our people. So the young people, we know the difference between a follower and a leader, and we're not going for it. And it's pretty much over with. Because you see, the Egyptian black hoteps even want to be called Egyptian. They don't even say the original name of Egypt, which is Mizraim. And it is a Moorish word. It's already Mizir in Arabic, simply meaning country. It is the country of the Moors. It is our country. Missouri is country. And it is proven. And it is proven with, you know, top flight research. You know, it is proven. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, the Missouri Compromise, was all about taking our land, and we have the American descendants of African slaves want to get up in our business, and I'm not about to let them. I'm not about to let no descendants of no slave who couldn't read tell me nothing when we always been reading, and we know exactly who we is. Okay. Okay, they wanted to extend slavery over to the brown-skinned Native Americans who look like this. Do you see the brown skin? They will sit up there in your face. They will sit up there and tell you this is a black man, and you can see that his skin is brown. So do you see what we dealing with? Okay, do you see what we are dealing with? They will sit up there and tell you this man's skin is black, and this man obviously is nowhere near black. So they putting everybody in the same boat who believe that they black. If you believe that your light skin is black, you put in the same boat as the African who came over here as the slave. So they use the African against you because of the dark skin. So you believe you are African, you got to get put in the same boat as the African slaves. When we know in all of this land, it was all types of people living here. And they didn't came over here to dupe them and trick them up out of this. So they can get up out of here. So they can get them up out of here and steal everything. Stealing all the resources. That's all they do. They planet hustlers. They go planet to planet stealing. You know, and this is 1854. So that means they was nowhere up in here. They was not even up in here operating yet. They just getting over here, excavating our mounds and our pyramids. They was up in Grand Canyon, Arizona, not even letting people over there. And we know we was up in here. We know this is our territory. And he is not even letting people in there no more, stealing our Egyptian artifacts. Or our Kemetic, or should I say Moorish. I would rather say Moorish. I'm not even saying Kemetic no more. So, I'm on top of the game. And the A.D.O.S is on they on red alert. They on standby. And warning to them, don't try to steal from the DOT. It's not happening. So I'm going to end this video because this is just the informational part. My rant against them is coming next. I'm going to do a rant against the A.D.O.S and anybody else who trying to steal from the Moors, the Moorish, or the indigenous. Stay away from Whysupreemuhciss. I'm not playing. Don't play with it at all. The fight or the argument and debate with the Moorish and the indigenous is our fight. The black and the Afro is not welcome with this fight. This is in-house fighting. We know we are Indians or indigenous, but what our brothers is saying, that's not what they want to be claiming at this time. And we telling them that's what we need to be claiming. That is what the argument is. We know who we is, but we don't need y'all in the business. So I'm shutting this video down because I just got to do a part 2. I'm saying, instead of talking myself to death and you, but you understand the information. You know what I'm delivering, and you know what we striving towards. American descendants of Trail of Tears. I'm on my way to the IRS building right now to trademark it. You know what I'm saying? Chicago people and Folks Nation is mine. And soon we will have our civilization back. As long as we emulate the prophet and we ride in truth, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Learn to love each other instead of hate, and just listen. Listen to observe and comprehend what we are reading and what we are conveying to each other. Because I'll get you the information. I'll work hard to get this information, and we can break it all down together. You know, because they cannot trick me. And if you learn they can't trick you, if you learn to think they can't trick you. Because everything, all of these acts, all of it had to do with us. It had nothing to do with nobody else but us. And everybody stealing from us. Everybody want to dupe us. I'm on top of the game. So, peace out. And I'll probably do a part 2 tomorrow. On next, or next few days. Because we got to get on this A.D.O.S. We have to get on top of the A.D.O.S. ASAP. I want to shut down in the next 30 days. I don't even want to see that shit on the internet no more, because this is disrespect. Because we even had Dane Calloway and them out here with the Aborigine movement. They not even mentioning that. The A.D.O.S. is not even mentioning a brother. You know what I'm saying? And we know the movement that they making, so you can tell the A.D.O.S. is nothing but a mask for the Aborigine movement and the Moorish movement. It is nothing but a cover-up. It is obvious it's nothing but a cover-up, because they not even mention the fact that we are the indigenous. They want to keep saying black. So we have to get on top of the A.D.O.S. I want a full APB out on the A.D.O.S. I want a full watch red alert on them. Category 5 hurricane alert on them. No sneaking in on this indigenous affair. No slipping in with your black, with your African. No sneaking in with your faulty legalese terminology. No sneaking in. It is what we say, or it is nothing. And shout out to everyone in the indigenous and Moorish community who has been fighting. And I'll be back at you. Peace out.